In this video, we will be going through an overview of the information that you will need to fill out for your hazard register template. We will be going through each of the columns of the third sheet and providing some extra information about how they should be filled out. The locations column is where you will fill out the rooms related to the hazard. If multiple rooms are applicable to this hazard, they can be separated with commas. Here's an example of acceptable location inputs. The hazard class column contains a drop-down with the different hazard classes you may choose from. Note that you may only select one hazard class per row as indicated in the column header. To know which hazard class you should use, refer to the hazard listing worksheet. Once you have chosen a hazard class, clicking into the hazard description column will now give you access to a drop-down menu containing all the related hazards. From here, you can select all the hazards that you want to indicate. Multiple hazards can be entered into this field by repeating the process of accessing the drop-down menu. Please note that although you can have multiple hazards from the same hazard class, these hazards may not have the same risk control measures and risk levels, and as such, would not be appropriate to list in the same row. Refer to the third video in this series for a visual explanation. Also, once your hazard descriptions have been chosen, avoid changing the hazard class because the hazard descriptions will not be automatically removed. If you reach a point where you have multiple rows of information filled out and would like to see a filtered view of the items you have already added, please observe the filter button found in the bottom right corner of each of the column headers, which will help you sort through your information. Remember to remove any filters added when the template has been filled out. Next is the How Exposed column, which is where you will be able to specify how the hazard you have listed can be exposed to. This is a fully editable field, but any text that you enter may require a leading apostrophe such that the input is entered into the cell as text, instead of an Excel function. The Risk Control Measures Currently in Place column is another drop-down menu field that you can choose multiple options from. This field contains the risk control methods currently being used in the workspace to combat the hazards you have listed. This is a multi-select column, so you can indicate all the methods applicable. For any risk control measures that could not be found in the Risk Control Measures Currently in Place column, you may add them into the Other Risk Controls Currently in Place column. This is a fully editable field that you can type any information into. Again, remember to use the leading apostrophe to make sure your input goes in as text. Now that we've filled out most of our columns, we can now head to the current risk level column and figure out the risk level we'll be inputting. To do this, head to the Risk Rating tab and read through the descriptions of the risk severity row and likelihood of injury column to determine what level you will assign to your hazard. Please note that when assessing the risk level of a hazard, the assessment of the risk level should be done with a group of people, normally a committee, to ensure that little to no bias is being used to judge these potential hazards. If you ever have any inquiries or would like clarification on the hazard register information, please feel free to contact the safety office. Once a decision has been made on the risk rating, head back to the hazard register sheet and add it into the respective field. This field is a single select drop-down menu. Now, we'll move to the Further Risk Reduction Needed column. This column is where you can input any control measures that will need to be put into place to reduce any further risk of the hazard. This is again a fully editable field, so you may enter in any information applicable. Generally speaking, if you find that your hazard is resulting in a medium or high rating, you would make efforts or look for controls that can drop the rating to a low or very low. Finally, the last two columns are the Implementation by Whom and Date of Planned Implementation columns. These are fully editable fields that should contain the personnel that will implement the further risk reduction methods and when this implementation will occur. For lower current risk levels, this may not be necessary to fill out. And that is it. You've completed an entry for our hazard register list. Continue to add all other hazards related to your workspace. In the next video, we will go through an example of an entry into the hazard register, as well as highlight some important information that should be noted when filling out the template.